Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. I would invite everybody to join Council in O Canada. Thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk, are there any regrets for this evening?
We have no regrets to record.
Well, let's keep it
Mayor
that
Burton,
way.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I just got a text message from Councillor Longo, and he says that he's having trouble getting into the meeting. If the clerk's office could send him a note?
I think we can dedicate some staff here to getting him on board. And my phone just buzzed. That could be him too. All right. Councillor Chisholm?
My apologies, Your Worship, but I do have a regret, and it's our national anthem. I don't know about all of you, but it's cutting in and out, and it's terrible. And it's kind of embarrassing to have something coming across the ways. We need to improve that for our next meeting. So sorry to bring that forward, but we need to correct it. Thank you.
All right. There are many possible ways that could sound bad to you, and that includes all the millions of connections on the internet between here and you. So it'll take some investigating. Or as we used to say in master control at the television network, when the recipient, because the signal goes up to the satellite and down to somebody somewhere in the country, right? And I still remember the first time I heard the master control lead say to the caller, "Left here looking good." So that is a problem. We may have to buy bigger internet for everybody. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, I see none. Thank you, Council. Have we got Councillor Longo on? There's Councillor Longo. He's on board now, coming us from the scenic 16-Mile Creek Valley, as far as I can tell. Council, you have the minutes of the previous council meetings from February 22nd, March 8th, March 22nd, March 22nd. Do you have any changes? And if you have no changes, is there a mover and seconder to confirm them? Councillor Knoll and Councillor Palmer, any objection to the minutes? Madam Clerk, the minutes are adopted. All right, Council, we have 3 consent items: the remuneration report, the corporate policy report, and the lottery application by St. Cuthbert's. Councillor Duddick, are you moving?
All 3.
Thank you. And a seconder from Councillor Chisholm. Thank you. Still have those reflexes, Ray. Any objection to the consent items? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The consent items are adopted. And that brings us to our first discussion item, and that's the COVID-19 update from our CAO, Jane Closey. Ms. Closey, we look forward to your information. I understand that as temporarily discouraging as our COVID numbers seem to be, there is some positive news around COVID that you might share with us.
So good evening. This last March 24th, last week, was marked the 1-year anniversary of the declaration of an emergency by the town. Flags were lowered at half-mast at that point in time, so that we could commemorate the lives that we have lost in the town and in the region due to this pandemic. I realize, Mayor Burton, that doesn't start off on a very positive note, but it is a note I did want to make. Our residents and business community have certainly been resilient over the last year in terms of this pandemic, and we've pulled together and actually as an overall community done very, very, very well. So looking at the charts, I think I've brought these charts to you each time. It does show that the cases are again increasing. We had dropped down over the previous few weeks, and we are now starting to climb again. I think the last couple of days we've had over 2,000 new cases each day. Excuse me. The Ontario Medical Officer of Health has confirmed that we are now in the third wave of the pandemic. And of course, based on the provincial framework, many municipalities still sit, or many public health units still sit in the gray lockdown area. But for us, we remain in the red control area. Just today, 2 areas within the province moved back into the gray lockdown area from the red, and that include Hamilton just to the west of us. And in fact, this afternoon, the province announced that Middlesex and London was also moving from the orange, which they were previously, into the red zone starting tomorrow. The province has also targeted a fair amount of enforcement over the last couple of months, actually. They've increased their field visits to businesses to ensure there's compliance with the safety requirements. And they've hired a number of staff in order to ensure that the requirements of the province are being implemented. They've also modified the emergency brake that they announced recently. And the emergency brake is now in consultation quite closely with each of the public health units. So that is on the provincial front. Oh. So in Halton itself, Halton has fared much better than the rest of the province. I won't say much better, but it has fared better. Our positivity rate, for example, is below 3%, whereas in the province it's around 6%. So we are doing fairly well. Our hospital and our ICU levels are quite satisfactory or quite good. So we sit in not a bad position to weather the rest of this third wave of the epidemic. The one major concern I think that all of you have heard in the news is the variant and the variants. There are several of them. I think there's around 395. There are some that are more significant than others. They now make up about 51% of the overall cases within Halton. And you can see from the graph that there's been some uptake in the number of cases in Halton, but certainly doesn't look quite the same at the provincial level. The province has made some changes to their framework, 2 significant ones that I'll note, and these are relevant for us in the red control zone. Restaurants and bars, they have made some changes. Previously, they were at 10 people limit within the facilities. Now they've moved to a 50% of the capacity of the restaurant or bar, up to a maximum of the 50 people. They also have made some changes to the religious services, weddings and funerals, so those gatherings are now limited to their ability to maintain the 2-meter physical separation distance. A positive note on the restaurants, our patio season is starting up. I think last year we had about 92 patios permits issued within the town. We already are processing or have approved about 85 permits, so they're well underway. And with the nicer weather that we've been having of late, certainly there'll be lots of enjoyment, particularly for this upcoming long weekend, to enjoy some of those patios. This is a chart that the province had put out. They put it out at the beginning of March, so it is a little bit dated. But what it does show is the sequencing of the delivery of the vaccine. This is the most significant positive note, I think, in the presentation. The vaccine is, the quantity and supply of vaccine certainly have been increasing. And the province has been able to move a little bit faster than what they at first had anticipated. And within Halton, it's even a better story, which I'll just get to in a minute. So this chart can see that the preference for the delivery or the framework that the province has set up is looking at the age, the vulnerability of people, and the people who cannot work from home as priorities in this phase 2 in the sequencing. So in terms of Halton itself, we've done very well, actually. Dr. McGenty had done a presentation at Regional Council last week. It is a very positive outlook in terms of the rollout of the vaccine. The province had not anticipated rolling out the 80 until the beginning of April, I think the date was, that the region has started that much earlier. In fact, last Friday we started with the 70-plus age group. So it's proceeding very, very well. There is several facilities within the town that are opening, which I'll just get to in a second here. I think there's about 67,000 doses that have been administered in the region to date. So we have 6 clinics open across the region. 2 of them are within Oakville itself at St. Vladimir's, as well as the OTMH. They're open 7 days a week by appointment only, so that's the only way you can get access into those facilities. They are following, as I had said before, the eligibility criteria that the province sets out. So the region does not set who comes in for the vaccination. That is all set by the province, and they're administering based on that ethical framework that the province has set out. They do have other facilities that they've been looking at. So as the supply increases, they have the ability to move to additional facilities in order to increase the number of doses that they can do within the region. They're also looking at pharmacies, mobile clinics they've looked at, and other types of ways in order to deliver the vaccination faster to the community. But again, it is all dependent on the supply. In terms of Oakville's support, we're ready, willing, and able to assist the region in any way we can in terms of moving forward with the vaccination. There are 5 groups that get together on a regular basis with the region. The Facilities and Logistics Group help with looking at all of our facilities to see whether or not they're suitable enough for the delivery of a clinic for the region. The region has looked at almost all of our facilities and have them understood in terms of what they can do as they get more supply and whether or not they want to roll them out. Communications, we are relying on the region for the main communications, and then we are repeating their messages through our website. But they are the main voice in the distribution of the vaccine as well as the pandemic. And as a result, actually, the communications seems to be going very well. We've had very few concerns raised at the town level. And in fact, the overall view at the region, or from the many of the people that have commented, are that the vaccine rollout has gone very well, and the region itself has had very few complaints. We have a human resources group that looks at staffing potential to support the region. Our transportation, our transit, is providing for transportation to the various clinics. And as a group of CAOs, we meet on a weekly basis. So spring is just around the corner, or actually we had it last week. We're starting to open up some of our facilities, or change over really from the winter season into the spring season. So just to give you a small update in terms of the changes that we've had lately, the tennis and pickleball courts are now open. They're actually about 3 weeks ahead of schedule, so they're all open for play at this point in time. The basketball courts are also open. That is also ahead of schedule, and there's about 17 locations of the basketball locations that are open. We're looking at our outdoor pools. We are preparing for an early opening of the 5 locations. Pools were quite popular last year, so we want to be able to respond to that need in the community as soon as we can. And of course, community gardens are on schedule to open the 1st of May so that the gardens can get underway. The spring programs and the April break will be starting. We had over 2,000 registrants on the first day of opening that up. And of course, we've got the kickoff for our Ready, Set, Spring initiative with the drive-throughs through both Coronation Park and at 16 Mile for donations, starting on April the 10th. We have quite a few programs reaching out to the seniors, particularly over this long weekend, when a lot of them expect to see guests for the holiday season. And of course, I'd already spoken to the patio program as well. So in terms of town services, we're continuing on with virtually all the town services. Anywhere we can, we're delivering them into a virtual format. Our Service Oakville counter is open, but we do encourage people to use the services online. We have a number of pieces that we've transferred over to an online, and so we certainly encourage people to check the website to look where they can do something online rather than making the trip out. This slide is a bit of good news, and I think it was the good news perhaps the mayor was speaking of. I did want to summarize for you some of the funding. The province and the federal government have responded, I think, quite well to a municipality's need for the costs that we're experiencing. So the Safe Restart funding, I've summarized it there. The 2020 funding for transit actually spills over into 2021 of this year until about March. And then you'll see the monies coming in 2021 for both general COVID costs and transit costs. Now, these are costs that we need to submit to them to qualify under their COVID program, but these are the monies that are available to the town itself. We also of late have had some new funding programs that have come out. The community healthy communities through the federal government, it's about $31 million across the country to healthy communities. So we have submitted a program for that funding, and there is a second wave of the funding as well. There's new funding that's just been announced. It is a 5-year program for the vehicle emissions infrastructure program. So that's to support charging stations or smaller electric vehicles for municipalities and others. So that is continuing on with funding now that's available. They also have the Community Building Fund, which is their capital stream that is targeting sports and recreation facility or infrastructure that really provides ability to address some of the public health concerns COVID-related within our sports and recreation facilities. And the newest one is actually the doubling of the federal gas tax that has just come in just last week. So at this point in time, we receive about $6 million under the gas tax, so it would double it. So we would be looking at about $12 million of funding under the gas tax program. So that was certainly good news to hear. So as I close off in the presentation to you, with all the good news we've received in terms of the vaccine, the response to the needs of municipalities and the funding program, I did want to still bring us back to, and as Dr. McGinney had said last week at her presentation, that while we have some good news we're looking forward to and perhaps the end of the pandemic in the interim, we still need to be cautious. So even those who have had a vaccination still should be looking at putting in place these safety measures, even though they've been themselves been vaccinated, and that should stay in place until a good portion of the community has actually been vaccinated. So it's critical that everyone still maintain in this interim period to wash your hands, stay home when you're sick, physical distance and wear a mask, and stay home. Don't take those non-essential trips. Use those essential trips so that we can all stay safe over the next period of time. And Mayor Burton, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Yes, keep protecting ourselves and each other. And Council, let's take questions. Councilor Lischner, are you having trouble hearing anybody?
Well, now I could hear you. Couldn't hear you.
Well, you have first go at questions if that was your intent.
Great. Thank you very much, Jane. Wonderful presentation there with the updates. So my question is regarding the, I I realize it's through Halton region, but the vaccination program, there was a jurisdiction, and I'll mention it, was Toronto, talking about an on-call list for end of day if someone can make in the last half hour to make sure that there aren't any spoiled vaccines at the end of the day. Is anything like that happening here, or maybe it's not an issue at all?
I'm confident, actually, the region is looking at all the things that every other municipality, in fact, they do a fair amount of sharing of ideas among the various public health units. That particular one, I don't know what they're doing with it myself, I don't know. I know that they have about 6 doses within 1 vial, and they've been consistently using that at each one of their locations. So maybe over the next few weeks, we can give you an update if there's any change in that.
Okay. And my second question is just, could you note what initiatives the gas tax program in Oakville is used for?
So we use it for a fair amount of transit, actually a fair amount of transit. A lot of the roads and works, particularly the renewal component, we use it for that. I'm sure Nancy could give a much broader update, but I think those are the general categories. Yeah, those are the general categories.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lischina. Councillor Robertson, you're next.
Hi, Jane. Just before the meeting started, I had a message from one of the churches in Ward 1 asking to clarify the difference between what the region says on its website in terms of church attendance right now and what the province has come out with, because they didn't want to restart if they're not going to follow it right. And I did see that you had a slide with the 2 meters. Is that the strict requirement now is just 2 meters?
That's what I understood, actually. I had checked the region's website as well, and that's the extent of the requirements for religious events, as an example. That does not include the reception end of it, so receptions are not subject to that. They're subject to the previous requirements, but it was maintaining the 6 meters.
This is just for church services per se?
That's right.
Or funerals?
Funerals, weddings,
Yes.
funerals, and
Okay.
church services.
Weddings? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next questioners are Councillor O'Meara, Councillor Adams, Councillor Nolan, Councillor Longo.
Sorry, Your Worship, I don't know if that was me. Your mic sort of went down soft there, but I'll take the podium unless there's some objection.
You got it right. It's you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much, CEO Closey. We've already, with the warm weather, started to have some antisocial behavior down in the Bronte Heritage Park. We've had kids jumping off of the washroom. We've had fires in the washroom again. We have continued antisocial behavior, to say the least. What are our plans, learning off of what we went through last year about the opening up of parks and in warm weather, that we're going to try and execute this year to maybe get ahead of some of the challenges we had last year?
Last year, we relied on the redeployment of staff to cover our Parks Ambassadors program. With the other services beginning, we can't rely on that going forward. So we actually have retained Parks Ambassadors, so it's a dedicated program that's run through municipal enforcement. It's the first wave of education and awareness within the parks and the other areas where there could be no distance separating or no wearing of masks, for an example. So the Parks Ambassadors is our first program. Municipal enforcement will follow up after that. If we're not seeing compliance to the requirements, municipal enforcement will be out. One thing we did learn from last year in terms of the bonfires or the fires within the various areas was it was very effective to bring in fire to put out those fires. They come in and put that out with all their gear. It certainly sends a different message to the community and to the people that are sitting around that bonfire when an entire truck comes in and puts it out. So that was quite effective last year in deterring those, and we put that in place this year. Following right up behind fire is also municipal enforcement, so they can lay any charges under our parks bylaw that are necessary. So at this point in time, those are the strategies we have in place. It's a program that is coordinated through municipal enforcement, so we can easily move from the education and awareness into the enforcement realm if we need to.
I thank you for that. I guess my question then is, if we find that we need more park ambassadors, we need more sort of bodies in the public spaces that are problematic across the town, not just in the south, everywhere. What are we going to do? Do we have a plan? Is there a way that we can, you know, I mean, can we repurpose people who are cutting grass? Can we what's the plan if we need to sort of double down on those bodies in the park who need to sort of have some sort of a authoritative role? And if this continues to go the way it's going, do we have a backup plan for some more bodies, perhaps?
So I think there's two things that we have. One is we'll be monitoring it on an ongoing basis, so we could retain some additional parks ambassadors, which are a little bit easier to do than municipal enforcement officers. We also have been working with municipal enforcement officers throughout the region. So we have some abilities to hire contract or other ways to reinforce our municipal enforcement. So I would say to you, we have both of those means in order to back up the enforcement or education and enforcement program that we have going forward. And we're going to be monitoring on a regular basis. I think generally people are, as I'm sure all of us can appreciate, are getting very frustrated with the pandemic. That doesn't mean that we should be at all putting aside the health measures. But it is more important that we're out there in order to be able to curtail any activities and follow up with enforcement, because we've had a year of these regulations in place, and it's important that we make sure we can also enforce.
And I appreciate that. I think if it takes more than 12 months and so many people dying, people still haven't been educated on what they should or should not be doing, then we might need to step up on the enforcement issue. And do we have the ability to deputize people as bylaw enforcement as needs be, or is there a special process for that they need to go through some extra training, or did the province give us the authority in the emergency act to deputize whoever we might need?
Well, we have the ability to do that now. There is training that needs to take place. That's why the contract piece is through others is a good means to be able to do that. We have some additional staff, people within staff who have been trained previously. So I think we'll look at all of those ways in order to complement the enforcement side of it when we need to.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Your Worship.
I would add, too, I think this is a perfect use of the COVID funding. If you recall, the region has within their budget additional monies to provide to each of the municipalities in order to support an enforcement program. So this is certainly one of the uses of the funding that the region and the town have gotten from the province and the federal government.
All right, the next councillor. I think I said it was going to be.
I think that's me.
I thought I said it was going to be you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Your Worship. First, I just wanted to help answer the question about the concern around wastage of vaccines that was raised earlier. The region does have a method by which, when you're booking your appointment, you can select to say that you're available at short notice to come to a clinic within an hour to make use of time slots that might open up during the process. So the region's aware of that, and while they do their very best to reduce or minimize the chance of wastage, they have a process by which they can bring residents in effect, to bump them up from their original booking time. So that is being taken care of at the moment. Then I had one question and one comment, really. The first question was about event listings. I've had a couple of questions from individuals about the event listings that we have on the town's website, which I understand right now we're not taking any event applications for obvious reasons. But I think the website is still being kept current. For example, I think we've got one charitable event that's being run in April as a drive-by event, which shows up as an event listing. Is the town still maintaining the event listing with respect to noting things that are going on there?
Yes, I will check into that. I assume we are. And so I'll just make sure that we are maintaining that. I would think for any of the current events that we have, that we should be maintaining it.
Right, but we're not taking new event
No.
applications, so there are not going to be any street festivals, there are not going to be any large rib fests or anything like that going on. As far as I know, all those large events have been canceled for the upcoming
That's
season.
correct.
Correct. Okay, and then I want to thank staff for their efforts at enforcement at Valleybrook Park, similar to Councillor Amira's comments about large gatherings. Councillor Lischina and I have had a number of complaints about large gatherings at our basketball court at Valleybrook, which are beyond the allowances of the red zone restrictions for gameplay and scrimmage and numbers of individuals in the court and so forth. So I appreciate staff reviewing that issue and attending to the court location in the early evenings and late afternoons. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you. Most of my questions got responded to, but I do want to just follow up on events. I just want to get clarification on what the current rules are in terms of permitting special events. I know that obviously we're not permitting them in the next few months, but do we have a time when we're entertaining them at this point, some point in the future, in the fall or in 2022?
I think it all
In terms of using just to clarify, in terms of using our spaces and permitted facilities, I guess is what I'm leading towards.
So I'll begin the answer, and I'm going to ask Colleen if she could maybe come and speak directly to the event side of it. We are following, of course, the provincial requirements. We are also looking at the same time of what we need to do in order to ramp up if our situation from red zones changes. So we're always looking 1 or 2 steps into the future to see how we can then ramp up our programs to meet those provincial requirements. And with that, I'll turn it over to Colleen.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 2 key dates that you'll want to be aware of. The first one is May 1st, and what we will allow after May 1st is various permitting for wedding photography and small wedding events. So they have to be in compliance with the current regulations, but we are allowing that. We also will be looking after July 1st at whether or not we'll start taking applications. It will depend on what's happening in terms of what zone we're in and what the congregation limits are, but we are taking a look at that as well. And just a reminder as a plug, Ready, Set, Go, or Ready, Set, Spring, we have a drive-through event that is going to be extremely exciting, and that's to collect charitable donations for the community, and that's going to be done at Coronation Park in the morning of April 10th and in the afternoon at 16 Miles, so I encourage everyone to come out.
So yeah, I lined you up for a commercial plug there. Probably to you too, Colleen, what is the current status of the Oakville Centre? Obviously, the events are canceled for, I should say live events are canceled for the next while. What is the current plan around Oakville Centre and bookings and or shows?
So what we're doing right now is we have virtual presentations that we're doing so that people are still able to connect and feel some sort of theater experience, and that's been very well received. And we're looking at additional offerings in the fall, depending on what transpires. Again, we are hopeful that in the fall we might be able to do in-person presentations or a hybrid blend where you have some virtual, some in-person as well. But we're watching to see what the provincial regulations look like. But the staff is certainly ready to go should those regulations change.
That's great news. My last question relates to vaccinations and our staff. I've heard that a number of companies, in particular, I haven't heard yet about businesses, but certainly some companies, Canada Goose was a recent one, have been making allowances for staff to take paid time off as an encouragement to get vaccinations when their time comes up, similar to rules for voting. Is this something that we're contemplating at the municipal level to encourage as many of our staff as possible to get their vaccinations when it is their time?
We do currently allow staff to take time off to get for example, the flu vaccination. So those kinds of allowances would be similar in the case of the vaccination.
Okay. Okay, and we'll be openly encouraging it to try to.
Yes, we will be.
that's
We
great.
have been certainly sending those messages. I send out an everyone email to staff on a weekly basis, and that is certainly part of the messaging. As you had seen from that provincial sequencing of the vaccination, they are looking at in phase 2 vaccinating any employees who must come into work. So that certainly helps, and we are encouraging wherever possible that people get the vaccination.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And now we come to Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Your Worship. Jane, I just have one question and then a comment. And my question is related to vaccination and the vaccination program. Are you seeing anything in the numbers where people 70 plus are actually not coming to the vaccination because of mobility issues or access? Is there a program to do either any type of mobile vaccination, or are you not seeing that as an issue? Because other jurisdictions do have some issues where they're not seeing the 80 plus population coming to site. Have we seen any issues in Oakville or in Halton?
I understand for the region that we have actually experienced a fairly good turnout for particularly the 80 plus. I'm not as confident. I just don't know the numbers for the 70 plus at this point in time. But for that age group, as well as for the 70 plus age group, that's why transit is so involved with the region, so that we can provide the caravan support. So there is a lot of support actually with the region in order to ensure that people with any mobility issues can get to those clinics. So that's been well worked out, even in terms of the design of the clinics themselves, so they can easily reboard in order to be returned home again. So yes, that is very much part of the plans.
Okay, that's great. And then just my one comment is I just want to commend town management and staff for, you mentioned 1 year, everyone's been at this for a long time, and to see the ability to pivot and support our residents, especially with a lot of them being at home. I want to thank just, from what Councillor Elgar and I see in Ward 4, but I'm sure it's across the town. I just want to commend everyone for being able to pivot, to be able to support residents and do that under very challenging circumstances. So I think it means a lot, and I just want to send those feelings of pride, if you will, for the efforts that have been made by town staff and management. So thank you for that.
So Councillor Longo, I will say as a new CAO, first of all, thank you for those comments on behalf of all staff. I have actually been pleasantly surprised, overwhelmed actually by the absolute support and dedication from town staff. They are a great group, and they have certainly come to provide everything the residents are looking for. So it has been a long year, but they've done a fabulous job. So thank you very much for those comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The next questioner is Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mayor. CAO Closey, most of my questions have been answered. Going back to Councillor Longo's question about caravan, I've had a lot of positive responses from residents who have made use of the service. Given the difficulty with taxis as a result of insurance, we have very few wheelchair accessible taxis operating in the town at this point. Any capacity concerns at all in terms of our specialized service?
I would, no, none have been brought to my attention at all. In fact, any reliance we did have on the taxis is, I think, getting less. But perhaps if Barry Cole is on, and if he has noted any difficulty on the caravan side, he could maybe sign on. If we don't see him, then I will assume we haven't. There, Barry is. Thank you, Barry.
Good evening. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe Councillor Giddings, your question was, has there been any strain on the caravan capacity given the constraints from the taxi industry? So to this point, there has not. We've had a couple of glitches here and there. We've been able to address those individually, but everybody who's needed a ride to the vaccine site has gotten a ride there. So no, we haven't any capacity issues at this time.
I appreciate that, and I'd also like to thank your staff for the caring they've shown to a number of individuals that were skeptical and worried, if I could say, in terms of making use of the service for the first time. Kudos to your staff. They certainly made people feel very comfortable with the service. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Giddings. Councillor O'Meara, you still have you have your hand up electronically. Do you have another question?
Sorry, Mayor Burton, we're all having a really hard time hearing you.
Really?
Very
really
soft
faint.
spoken.
Well, gosh, I don't know what to do. I've got a microphone, it's on. I was asking Councillor O'Meara if his electronic hand is up because he has another question.
No, that was earlier. I'm taken care of. Thank you.
Okay, so you know, it's still up on your screen, so thank you for that. All right, if we are out of questions, is there a mover and seconder to receive the information? Councillor Chisholm and Councillor Adams. Any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being none, the motion carries.
Do you think we could recess for 2 minutes so Ken can reset the audio?
Council, I gather you're having trouble hearing, and I'm going to recess the meeting for just a few minutes while staff reset the audio. And we'll see on the other side of the reset if that fixes everything. There we go. All right. Council's recess for audio reset is over. Hopefully everybody's experience is better. And we can turn now to the agenda item number 5, which is the Oakville Enterprises Corporation quarterly update and authorization request. And we have a presentation from Oakville Enterprises CEO, Rob Lister. Mr. Lister, welcome. Council looks forward to your presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Burton, councillors. Thanks for the opportunity to present an update from OEC and Oakville Hydro. With me today online are David Brennan, Chair of Oakville Enterprises, and Scott Moody, Chief Operating Officer, Oakville Hydro, and Karen Marner, Chief Financial Officer. This evening, Scott will be providing the update to Council, and we'll also be able to answer questions during and after the presentation. So I'll now ask Scott to start the presentation. Thank you. Scott?
Thanks, Rob. Everyone hear me fine? Good. So good evening, Mayor Burton and councillors. I'm very pleased to provide you an update on the OEC group of companies today. Next slide, please. Today, we are focusing on 5 areas, starting with a review on the pandemic and the impact on our organization, then an update on health and safety. I will highlight a new award we received, provide an update on new business growth, and finally, I'll share some examples of our community involvement. Next slide, please. A few weeks ago marked a year since the arrival of the pandemic. Despite its impact, I am still encouraged by the resiliency of our employees and our customers. In the early days, information was changing so quickly and the pandemic presented new challenges seemingly on a daily basis. Overcoming those challenges required change, and that change drove innovation throughout the organization. For example, to maintain social distancing, we created a second virtual control room in an open space at our Redwood Square headquarters, so we could continue to operate Oakville's electricity grid 24 hours a day. As part of Oakville Hydro's business continuity plans, voluntary rapid COVID tests are offered to employees working in the field as an additional safety measure. The way we managed our operations through the pandemic has been noticed by our customers too. This past year, we received some of the highest customer satisfaction scores in our history. People and businesses were stressed during the pandemic, and our objective was to ensure that we did not add to that. We are proud that we are able to maintain the service levels our customers expect, all while keeping safety as our top priority. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, many challenges were coming at us quickly, and we knew that the pandemic was impacting our customers as well. On the left, you can see a list of the various rate changes and payment options and customer programs Oakville Hydro implemented to help lessen the impacts and to support our community. Next slide, please. Although our employees were dealing with their own stress at home, their strength and commitment to our essential work definitely stood out. Here you can see how employees have adopted the new personal protective equipment, making masks for their communities, bottling hand sanitizer for colleagues, and even spending some leisure time painting rocks to encourage the neighbors. Next slide, please. Not surprisingly, health and safety continues to be a top priority for OEC. Across the province, we partner with Rob Ellis and My Safe Work to educate students on the importance of workplace safety and to become the next safety champions. OEC's Director of Health, Safety, and Environment speaks regularly to local colleges and high schools about safe work as part of this initiative. At OEC, we continue to weave health and safety into the very fabric of our organization. Next slide, please. Our award. Oakville Hydro aims to have one of the most modernized electricity distribution grids in Canada. As part of this journey, we were very pleased to be recognized by the Canadian Electricity Association for our work in spatial data intelligence. This project is the foundation for optimizing our asset renewal program, providing valuable insights into the health of our distribution system that will drive improvements in reliability. The value that spatial data intelligence brings ultimately changes the way Oakville Hydro monitors, plans, and implements maintenance and capital work. The information we collect and then integrate into our digital solutions establishes a visual map that helps us target strategic investments into our system. This will ultimately lead to decreases in power interruptions in the future. Next slide, please. Another way we are entering into geospatial services and technologies is through the recent acquisition of QSP Geographics. Our newest business is located in North York and employs some 90 people. The QSP team will advance OEC's location intelligence and GIS capabilities and increase our market share in this growing sector. Next slide, please. We also have exciting news in the growth of OEC's GeoExchange business. The organization has entered into a joint partnership with GeoSource and has recently won a contract to develop a GeoExchange system for a new large condominium development in Brampton. Through these reliable utility-grade GeoExchange systems, we are pleased to be doing our part to combat climate change with low-carbon, emissions-free heating and cooling technologies. Next slide, please. Despite the pandemic, our employees have continued to participate in several initiatives in our local communities. On Bell Let's Talk Day, employees called, texted, and posted on social media about mental health. Given the restrictions of the pandemic, mental health has been highlighted as a struggle for many. We provide links to health and wellness resources to our employees to encourage them and the people they know to find the help they need. In a couple of days, we'll be closing our Have Your Say Oakville Hydro website, where Oakville Hydro customers can provide their input about future investments as part of the capital planning process. To acknowledge their contribution, we will be providing a donation to the Oakville Hospital Foundation. We are very thankful for all those residents that have taken the time to add their perspective, and we are happy to be providing this donation on their behalf. Another important event was International Women's Day. Our employees posted several videos to show support for women and the acceleration of gender parity. Next slide, please. Caring for our planet and the environment is a guiding principle for our organization. This past Saturday was Earth Hour. This year, we saw a 5.25% drop in electricity. This reduction is equivalent to turning off over 600,000 LED light bulbs. I'd like to thank our customers for their continued support of this event and their ongoing electricity conservation efforts. Next slide. So this concludes my presentation this evening. I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address you today and feature the many successes our employees have achieved. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moody and Mr. Lister. Council, do you have questions? Councillor Lischina.
Thank you very much, Rob and Scott. So first of all, congratulations on the award. Awesome, awesome, awesome. That last point about the LED lights, could you confirm that all of them have been, that project has completed in the town with changing the lights to LED?
Through you, Your Worship, we have changed all of the street lights out as part of that swap out, and so the LED street lights are out there. But the 600,000 or so LED light bulbs that we mentioned there are just the equivalency of the electricity consumption that dropped during that Earth Hour, that 1 hour Earth Hour. Yep.
So besides the LED on the street lights, is there any other lighting that you will be looking at to exchange?
So through our conservation programs in the past, we've helped many commercial businesses, large and small, swap out legacy lighting structures and lighting systems for new updated LED systems. The payback is quite attractive, and so we would continue to support and facilitate where we can going into the future.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Any others? Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks again, everyone, for coming tonight. Because my question pertains to sort of looking forward, and we know that Ford of Canada is going to be working on EVs, and we know that there's a lot of battery technology coming to Ontario in particular. Any thoughts on the next OEC acquisitions or where we might be going in the green economy moving forward, or I guess some positive sort of perspectives on that? I mean, it seems like it would be a natural fit to where OEC is right now, but I'm just wondering what might be in your line of sights without giving anything away that you can't.
Sure. Yes, again, through you, Mr. Mayor. We've have a very comprehensive strategy that we've laid out, and part of that strategy is investing in renewable assets, renewable generation assets, and we are recently, or most recently, we've been working on a mobile battery energy storage solution, and it's a pilot project, but it has the ability. Because we've put this on a trailer, that we're actually able to truck this around across our distribution network here in Oakville, and even set it up if the customer has the right infrastructure to use at a customer site in cases of major outages or planned outages. So we're definitely getting into that space, so mobile energy storage or energy storage through batteries. And then on the climate change front, I did expand a little bit on our geo-exchange program, and one of the best ways that we feel that we can contribute to combating climate change is to help with converting heating and cooling systems to emissions-free geo-exchange systems. So they're very friendly to the environment. They provide a very comfortable experience for tenants and for people who have those systems, whether it's in their homes or in their businesses. So I would consider those to be, you'll be seeing more of those over the next few years.
Thank you so much, everyone, the whole team, for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If there are no other questions, is there a mover and seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Giddings and Councillor Elgar, thank you very much. Any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, the motion is carried. Thank you, everybody. We now have item number 6 on tonight's agenda, the Development Charges Update Study and Bylaw Amendment. And as the report details, this is a preliminary step to a bigger development charges bunch of work to create a brand. This is only an update. We're now beginning a whole new development charges study. We have a presentation from Matt Day, the Manager of Development Financing and Investments. And Council, let's give our attention to Mr. Day now. Mr. Day, we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, and good evening, members of council. I do have a presentation tonight on the DC bylaw amendment and going forward, the updates to our growth tools. So we did have the statutory public meeting in February where Gary Scanlon from Watson and Associates gave us a presentation on everything that the update study entails and the legislative changes that it reflects. So tonight I'll focus more on the financial implications and where we go from here. Next slide, please. So as I said, I'll start off with the legislative changes and then present what the 2021 DC rates will be, an update to the town share of growth, and then how we plan to move forward with our financial tools. Next slide. So it's been almost 2 years since Bill 108 was originally proposed, and there's been multiple iterations that we've reported through council and provided comments to the province for. And with Bill 197 coming into force, all of the changes to the Development Charges Act and the Planning Act are now in effect, and a transition period's been established of 2 years. So the transition period for the town to update our development charges, Section 37 of the Planning Act, which was bonusing and will become a CBC or Community Benefits Charge, and our Parkland Dedication tool will be happening over the coming 2 years. So tonight the focus is on development charges, and the DC amendment does update our bylaw for the legislative changes. Next slide, please. So there were a number of changes to DC collections, and these actually took force in January of last year. So we've had a bit of experience with them now, and we're starting to see what the impact is. So the first major change is for certain development types, there's the ability to defer and pay DCs in annual installments and beginning at occupancy. The intent from the province is to increase the range and mix of housing options and more affordable housing options. So for the town last year, there were 2 developments that were able to take advantage of this, a rental apartment and a retirement home, which resulted in about $3 million in development charges that normally we would have collected last year, but instead we'll be collecting over the coming years. So clearly there'll be a bit of cash flow impact on this that we'll need to manage. The next change is a rate freeze, where the intent of the province is to provide cost certainty to the development community. So what the rate freeze does is it sets the rate calculation date as of the date of a planning application for site plan or zoning bylaw amendment. And that rate freeze period will stay in effect until 2 years following the approval of that planning application. So time will tell how big of an impact that has. But what effectively it does is it shelters the development from annual inflationary increases or updates to the bylaw. The other change that is in Bill 108 is the additional exemptions for secondary units. And the intent here is clearly for an increase in housing supply and more affordable housing options. Previously, there were exemptions for additional units, and they've expanded the definition of this to include in new residential developments. Over the last 5 years, we've seen on average about 27 or so secondary units per year, which translates to around $300,000 in development charges that are town funded. So in recognition of the costs associated with the deferrals and the rate freeze, the province is allowing municipalities to collect development charge interest, and that of course is in the spirit of revenue neutrality. Next slide, please. So along with the DC amendment, we do have a development charges interest policy and related procedure before you tonight. The intent of this is to limit that financial risk in a fair and equitable way. The collection changes also apply to Halton region. So as we do collect development charges on behalf of the region, we've worked with the regional staff over the past year to align our interest policy and collection methods in order to reduce that administrative cost and also provide for effective customer service. The current interest rate is 2.45%, and we will be monitoring that rate in accordance with the costs, which, as I've mentioned, there's administrative costs, there's the inflationary pressures that we'll deal with, as well as the cash flow pressures. Next slide, please. So in the update study, there has been a change to the recoverable costs through development charges. I just want to remind everyone the amendment, as Mayor Burton mentioned, it is strictly an update based on the legislation. We haven't gone through and looked at our project costing or timing or the growth forecast. That's something we'll be doing during our next background study later this year. The major change in the update study is the removal of the mandatory 10% reduction for soft services, which has directly increased that recoverable amount through development charges. The other change is there was an amendment to the eligible services recoverable through DCs. So municipal parking has become ineligible. However, we can continue to collect for it until the end of the transition period, and that's reflected in the amended bylaw. Bylaw enforcement is a service that becomes eligible, and it's something that we'll be reviewing through the DC background study. Next slide, please. So for our DC rates, the table on this slide shows a residential single detached unit and non-residential per square foot of space. There are two main impacts that, should the amendment be passed, would take effect on April 1st. We have our annual inflation, which will occur per our current bylaw, and that's based on the non-residential construction price index, which is 2.5%. The other change is related to the amendment, and for residential rates, there would be an increase of a further 3.5%, and for non-residential rates, an increase by a further 0.8%. The reason the non-residential rates are only going up 0.8% is that the majority of the soft services are recovered for through residential development charges. Next slide, please. So development charges are the major source of financing for our growth-related infrastructure. And looking at the financial impact, we analyzed the 2018 DC study period of 2017 to 2026. And so you can see before the update and after the update, our total gross expenditures identified in the study were about $700 million. After making deductions for cost-sharing arrangements, we were able to collect $392 million through development charges. With the amendment, that number jumps up to almost $400 million. So the net impact is a decrease of $7.1 million over the 10-year period to the town share of growth, or on an annualized basis, $700,000. So it is a very positive impact, clearly. Next slide, please. So to dive into the town share in a little more detail, there are two major components that represent the town share of growth. There are deductions that are made, as well as exemptions. So again, this chart shows the before and after, and then the net impact. The first deduction is the mandatory 10% deduction, among other deductions. So that is the major positive impact that we see of $15.4 million. The next deduction is the benefit to existing. And what this is, it's the portion of a project that does benefit existing residents. So there are some projects, and one example is a road widening such as Spears Road, where as part of that project, we are widening the road, but we're also rehabilitating the existing lanes. So there's a deduction for that rehabilitation portion, which is benefiting the existing population. As you can see, at 136 million, that is the largest share of the town, or portion of the town's share of growth. Ineligible services are, what's reflected there is municipal parking at 7.2 million, which will be coming out of the DCs. Again, we will continue to collect for it over the next year and a half, and we are hopeful of being able to include that in a future community benefit charge and pick up that cost. The next deduction is a post-planning period benefit deduction, and this is a deduction to recognize the portion of a project that benefits the population growth beyond the DC study timeframe. So it is shown as a town share of growth. However, in a future DC update study, we can recover those costs. In terms of exemptions, we do have mandatory exemptions and discretionary exemptions. The large portion are the mandatory exemptions, and we've been seeing around 2 to 3 million per year in those. Those are our industrial expansion exemptions, exemptions for school boards or regional facilities, as well as the secondary units. So the $1.1 million increase over the 10 years for that is related to a bit of an uptick that we think we'll see with the expanded definition of secondary unit exemptions. Next slide, please. So I wanted to show a reminder of the timeline. We did bring a report in December on the transition plan. And one of the recommendations, of course, was to bring forward this DC bylaw amendment. And the other one was to delay our service area master plans due to the delay in the region providing our growth numbers beyond 2031. So this chart kind of shows where we are now, which is at the start of our journey to where we're going to go. And over the next year and a half during this transition period, we do have our development charges bylaw, community benefits charge bylaw, and parkland dedication bylaw that are going to need to be looked at and new bylaws brought forward. Even though we are bringing forward this DC amendment, it doesn't update the expiration date of the bylaw, so we do need to take a look at our DC background study and do a new one. It will be based on our previously completed master plans, but we'll be able to extend the time period to 2031, as well as look at project costing updates, project timing updates, as well as growth forecast updates. We have a park strategy underway that is looking to inform the parkland dedication bylaw and how we'll grow moving forward. So these three tools, I think it's really good that we're going to be looking at all of these together so that we can identify our total land and infrastructure capital needs over the forecast period and identify the appropriate financial tools to recover those costs from. And then, of course, once we do get the numbers from the region to 2051, we will initiate our new master plans, and updates to the growth tools will follow that. And that concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you very much for a very good presentation. And I'll look for questions from council. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton, I appreciate the presentation and the detailed report. The question I have is, the last information I had was that we are subsidizing the development industry in Oakville to the tune of $16,210,000 a year. Now, going forward, what is the number? Do I take 700,000 off the 16,210,000 to show that it's only like 15,500,000, or how does that work?
Through you, Mary Burton, Councillor Elgar, that number was provided in 2017. We worked with the region and other local municipalities, and at that point, we actually hadn't done our 2018 DC background study and bylaw. So that number was actually based on our 2013 background study and bylaw. It also looked at the cost of growth a little differently. It didn't include the benefit to existing, and it also included some other ineligible services. That's something we would look to provide an updated number when we take forward our next 10-year capital forecast if you wanted to see it done, including some of those items. As we haven't done the 10-year capital forecast in a couple of years, it's a little difficult to give you a full number. But it would, you're right that the impact would be a reduction of 700,000.
Appreciate that. I look forward to more details because I think the sad thing is, Matt, is that everybody used to, how everybody used to say growth pays for growth, when in actual fact, we know it doesn't, but it's the degree that it doesn't. So I think the message is starting to get out there, but it's very important that we keep telling people like how much we are actually, kicking in to help out the development industry. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I've submitted an op-ed to the media noting with approval the pledge by the present Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing that growth should and must pay for itself, and thanking him for the down payment he's given us on that promise, and noting that he has a ways to go to fulfill every ounce of what he promised. So thank you for keeping the pressure up. If there are no other questions, is there a mover and seconder for the small increase in our charges? Councillor Robertson, thank you, and Councillor Dudek, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection, and the update to the development charges and bylaw are all approved. Now, Council, we have the last item on the agenda, the advancement of community infrastructure report that I circulated, and oh, sorry, I've skipped the event. Wait, oh, here it is. It's on the top of the page. Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item is number 7, not number 8. The 2020 Economic Development Annual Report is up next. And we have a presentation by Milan Bowie, the Economic Development and Research Officer who's new to the town. And she joined the town, I say new to our meeting, last year as Economic Development and Research Officer, responsible for research-related activities in the department, as well as marketing. She previously worked with the Downtown Oakville BIA, and this is her first presentation. Milan, it's a pleasure to see you here. I was very pleased with the work you did at the Downtown BIA when I was on that board, and I look forward to more good work from you. Council, this is Ms. Bowie's presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. So good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. On behalf of the Economic Development Department, I'm pleased to present the 2020 Economic Development Annual Report. Just over 1 year ago, the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 outbreak a pandemic, and communities around the world entered lockdown. Non-essential business closures and public health requirements impacted businesses of all sizes. Tonight, I'll highlight key details regarding business activity, the pandemic impact on the local economy, and the Economic Development Department response. Throughout 2020, business activity took the form of company arrivals, expansion, and innovation. Virox Technology was the first recipient of the province's Ontario Together Fund, receiving $850,000 to scale operations and double its production of disinfectants. Ford Canada, Burlow Technologies, and other small businesses pivoted to create PPE for frontline workers, while Promation invested significantly in ventilator technology. Oakville welcomed several new companies in 2020, creating approximately 1,000 new jobs. Pictured on the slide, BDO Canada, Oakville's largest new employer, began moving into their new office building spanning 65,000 square feet in November of 2020. Bringing 500 jobs. Samuel Sons & Co. moved their Canadian headquarters to Oakville late last year, bringing 200 jobs. In addition to these large employers, Questica and Venture X also opened facilities in Oakville. An exciting announcement came from Ford Motor Company, noting that an investment of $1.8 billion would be used to retool the Oakville Assembly Complex to manufacture battery electric vehicles, creating a local hub, the first of its kind in Canada. Sorry about that. This slide shows the annual square footage of new development. Commercial development is showcased in blue on the slide, and industrial is displayed as gray on the slide. In 2020, we welcomed more than 690,000 square feet of new industrial and commercial development. The graph shows new development has historically followed a cyclical pattern of peaks and valleys, alternating between years of construction and absorption. Commercial development activity reflected a year of growth over 2019, notwithstanding the impact of the pandemic. New development accounted for over 500,000 square feet and included the King Ridge Crossing development and South Oak Junction. On the industrial side, construction values totaled $23.5 million, with new development accounting for the majority of the industrial activity and included Melrose Investments' new speculative industrial building, Habasit's new facility, and the Grunfos expansion. The long-term impacts of the pandemic on office and industrial real estate market remains to be seen, as many businesses continue to work remotely. Oakville's office vacancy rate increased by 3% by the end of last year, reaching 19.2% as businesses shifted operations to remote work. Oakville lease rates have stayed consistent since Q4 of 2019, not yet reflecting the current decreased demand. Conversely, Oakville's industrial market remains in high demand. In Q4, the vacancy rate decreased to 2.4%. Given the limited supply and high demand, the net rental rate hit a record high of over $10 per square foot. Each year, the Economic Development Department benchmarks the town against 17 other GTA municipalities in the area of property taxes, development charges, and industrial land sale values. The data is used to understand how well-positioned our community is for new investment from a cost perspective. Oakville's commercial market remains highly competitive, ranking within the top 5 in cost comparison for taxes and development charges. Oakville's industrial market is relatively less competitive, remaining more costly than half the municipalities reviewed in all charges. In response to the pandemic, the Mayor's Economic Task Force was formed. The town worked in partnership with the Oakville Chamber of Commerce, Oakville's Business Improvement Associations, and Visit Oakville to provide an immediate and coordinated response. Just 15 days after COVID-19 was declared a pandemic, an economic action plan was developed to address concerns voiced by the business community. The plan identified sorry, I must be missing a page. The plan identified 10 actions to support, sorry, let me just, the plan identified 10 actions. Actions to address cash flow issues and the need to keep development projects moving to support long-term recovery. The actions included property tax assistance, waived parking fees, expansion of the Digital Main Street program, and temporary bylaw suspension to support modified business operations. Throughout the year, our department worked with the task force to advocate for federal and provincial changes to support programs and to request financial assistance for businesses. In May, Oakville's Commercial Recovery Initiative was launched to support the safe reopening of businesses and restaurants. The initiative included a new patio program, a community-wide marketing campaign, and dedicated resources to help businesses move online. Given the success of the program, the Commercial Recovery Initiative has been extended into 2021. Oakville's patio season opens on April 1st, and the Digital Main Street program has been expanded through additional funding. Throughout the year, the task force regularly engaged with the business and development community to understand the local impacts of the pandemic through surveys and phone interviews. Online surveys were conducted in April and August to check in with and respond to challenges facing businesses. Through both surveys, the respondents were consistent in citing a loss of revenue, cash flow concerns, and decreased demand as the most significant impacts. One-on-one interviews were conducted with 20 of Oakville's top employers and contacts in the real estate and development community. Most notably, the pandemic has impacted how office space will be used. While most businesses will not reduce their space, many are planning to grow their companies remotely, expanding with no changes to current square footage. This trend is expected to continue into the foreseeable future. On the industrial side, companies have invested in facility updates to keep staff safe. The demand for industrial has accelerated due to the rise of e-commerce and logistics. Several key themes emerged through the interviews that provide the town with an opportunity to support longer-term recovery, including streamlining the development approvals process, advocating for hardest-hit industries like aerospace and manufacturing, and creating opportunities for sector collaboration and information sharing. In addition to our regular department functions, the following key initiatives were undertaken to support strategic goals and objectives. The Ontario Auto Mayors developed a 2021 action plan that includes 3 areas of focus: competitiveness, investment attraction, and electric vehicle adoption. Mancore Canada was successful in receiving Oakville's first environmental study grant through the Brownfield Community Improvement Plan, resulting in new industrial development activity. The Downtown Mitigation Strategy for the Lakeshore Road Reconstruction and Streetscape Project in downtown Oakville was recognized by the Economic Developers Council of Ontario Planning and Strategic Development Award at the EDCO Awards of Excellence for its unique and innovative approach to construction mitigation. And in late 2020, a long-term film contract was secured through the Oakville Film Office at Centennial Pool and the Oakville Centre for the Performing Arts, providing significant revenue to the town through the use of a vacant facility. Businesses across Oakville will require continued support through 2021. Our department will continue to focus on collaborating with stakeholders on recovery efforts, providing up-to-date information on programming and funding, and advocacy efforts to support businesses and impacts on key sectors. This concludes my presentation. I'd like to thank you, Mayor Burton, and members of council for your time this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for a very good report. And please don't trouble yourself over losing your place. I just did it before you came up, so it happens, right?
Thank you, Mayor Burton.
Council, do you have questions for Milan? Councillor O'Meara.
Thanks so much and welcome. I was very interested in the rates for commercial and industrial rental rates. Do you know, and I know small business is more of a regional issue, but do you know what the rates for retail have been fluctuating at, or where they've been in the past year, and in particular with some of our hot areas, whether it be the new downtown or somewhere else? Do we track that?
We don't have that information available to us right now. We have been working very closely, as many of you know, with our commercial districts to ensure they are provided with the supports that they need through the pandemic. But I'd be happy to look into that information and circulate it to council.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Mayor Burton. Welcome, Milan. Great to have you on the town team. One question I have, and you may not have it with you right now, is I'd be fascinated to know more about the employment statistics that you provided. So you gave us some of the new jobs that the businesses brought to Oakville, but I'm wondering if we know in depth the total number of jobs our businesses contribute, and how many of those folks actually live in Oakville. I think it's an important piece of data to be able to start to gather, because we look very much about the importance of a complete community, about wanting to have live, work, play, and knowing if people are coming in on the train and then going back home, or is this are they going to stick and be a part of the community, though we're thrilled for them to have a job and come in. Is that data that economic development has available or could start to report out on?
We don't have that information available tonight. I do understand that with the increased remote work happening, it's important to know where the workers are coming from, and typically we would get employment information from the census, which Stats Canada has indicated that we won't be able to get that information based on the impact that COVID-19 has on that data. But when we do have that information, our department would be happy to report it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. In the absence of other questions, is there a mover and seconder to receive the report? Councillor O'Meara, Councillor Longo, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection, and the report is adopted. The motion is adopted. Council, now it's time to move to item number 8, and this refers to the report I circulated to advance community infrastructure. And I'll just say that this is installment number 1 of a planned series of such moves. I think we all felt a sense of having ourselves stalled a little bit during the last year of pandemic, and I think with all the vaccines pouring into Canada, it's time to start thinking about moving forward in an even stronger way than we did during the pandemic. I am very proud of the way the town kept moving forward, even through the adversity of the pandemic, on the projects that were allowed to go ahead, finishing, for example, a community center, which was widely appreciated and celebrated in Southeast Oakville. And I understand from Councillor Liz Chinna that she would like to make a few remarks about the inclusionary element of this report. Councillor Liz Chinna?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to take a quick moment to acknowledge Annie Wang and members of the Iroquois Ridge High School Gender Sexuality Alliance. It's a school organization that educates students about and supports students of the 2S LGBTQ plus community. And the Alliance, along with their allies, including the following schools: Blake Lock High School, Oakville Trafalgar High School, Abbey Park High School, Garth Webb High School, and White Oak Secondary School, wrote to you and me asking about the Rainbow Crosswalk initiative. And I'm pleased to see it in this report, and I think it's an opportunity for council to continue the good work we've been doing with diversity and inclusion in our town, and I hope everyone is supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I was very struck by the way the high school students made special note that they wanted this to reflect not just the I'll get it wrong if I try to say it, the LGBTQ, but also BIPOC and other races. And so the super inclusionary nature of it was, I thought, very it was very good of the kids to bring forward that. Is there a mover and seconder for this report? Councillor Sandu and Councillor Palmer, thank you. Any objection to the motion?
Sorry, Your Worship, I just had a comment, if you don't mind, before that happened.
I don't mind at all. I welcome a hand no matter when.
I just wanted to say how great it is, I think, that about the skate park over on Cornwall. I know in Brawny, the skate park that we have over here, the kids flock to it. We have semi-pros now in the day who come, and they do moves that would blow your head off. And there are kids, 6, 7, 8-year-olds who come and just sit down and watch what's going on there. It's taken away from so much antisocial behavior that we had. It's a place for kids to go. and I think it is an absolutely incredible addition to the town. And I'm so happy to see another one of these coming in another area. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. As a matter of fact, the location that the young man, Crawford Hughes, who brought to our attention, Chris Mark told me is the only other place in town that the staff were able to identify that was far enough from homes that that skate park wouldn't cause, outrage and complaints. And another councillor here tonight and I went through quite an education about how far from homes skate parks have to be. A few years ago when we built one, what we thought was a perfectly good, very large community park, but apparently not quite big enough. Councillor Haslett-Gill.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, and thank you for your leadership in bringing this forward. And Councillor Miro, thanks very much for being so enthusiastic about the skateboard park, because in taking a walk with Mayor Burton, we not only had the young man who so eloquently delegated 2 years ago join us, but a young boy who is so super excited to have this in his neighborhood potentially. And this past year, when you think about what families have gone through and about COVID and about mental health and about healthy outlets, this is a great example of us stepping up to encouraging them to have those healthy outlets and listening to their desires to be a part of the process. And my hat's off to Crawford, because he really did champion this for his peers, not just and the next generation, not just for himself.
Thank you, Councillor. It occurs to me from what you reminded me of something. A lot of kids from all over town are going to Shell Park because it's the only place like it. And we'll repatriate some kids from the eastern side of town, I imagine. I expect there'll even be some skateboard tourism coming from the west of town, because all of our facilities are available to everybody. We don't check your neighborhood passport at the door or the gate. Councillor Chisholm?
Thank you, Worship. With respect to the skateboard park, I think this is a wonderful addition to the Central East area of Oakville. As you know, Your Worship, I'm not taking credit, but I project managed the one at Shell Park, and it is a very challenging and rewarding facility that we put in place, knowing that the kids were involved with the planning of that. And I think that the only message I would leave to all of the staff and to council is that when we're starting to plan this skateboard park, have the kids involved in the planning of the ramps and what should be involved in it. If you don't do that, you're not going to be successful. So that's the best practices when we did Shell Park. So my hat's off to your worship, your leadership, and the inclusion of this skateboard park. I'm really excited to see that come into effect in the area. Congratulations to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. My oldest daughter was involved in that Shell Park, and she still gives you a very good report for the way you worked with the kids. So,
well, I'm not taking credit. The kids were fantastic. Yeah. Matter of fact, just an aside, not to take too much of council's time, one of the individuals who were helped plan on that, we were using plasticine on a piece of plywood. That young gentleman got into the business and has been very, very successful internationally in the development of skateboard parks across the world. He's involved now. He's a consultant. So there you go. There's a good news story to it.
An economic development angle that I didn't know about. Thank you for that. All right, may I, Councillor Haslett-Gill.
Sorry, Mayor Burton, I did mean to say one other piece, and that is that the downtown BIA, and I know the other BIAs are excited to have the rainbow crossings. And I think the fact that it is close to the public library that uses the phrase, "you belong here," is really meaningful. I'm proud to be a part of the library board that Councillor Knoll chairs, but the fact that the crossing is going to be close to the library and really speaks to the inclusion that we so emphasize as part of our town, and in particular at the library, I'm thrilled that we're going to be able to see this come to life. And thanks to the teenagers who really raised their hand and reminded us that this symbolism matters.
Thank you, Councillor. It was very heartening when I spoke to the other BIAs to discover that all of our BIAs welcome all customers. And so with that, may I put the vote? No, Councillor Palmer.
Sorry, Your Worship. I mean, we're talking about all the projects, so I just thought that I would also make some comments that we're really excited about the North Park plans coming forward. It's been long awaited in our community, and I know it'll certainly be appreciated by all of the wards that are connected in North Oakville, and we're really looking forward to it. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, I'm going to call the vote. I think they just let me do that now. Are there any objections? Madam Clerk, there's no objections. The motion is carried. Thank you, everybody, and congratulations to us all. We now come to new business. Notice of motion, emergency congratulatory condolence remarks. Councillor Dudek, I understand, and she has her hand up, but I was expecting that she might have something to say. Councillor Dudek.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have two congratulatory notes here. One, to announce that Oakville has been recognized by Festival and Events Ontario for the Christmas drive-through event held at Coronation Park and the fireside chat with Santa to replace the annual Oakville Santa Claus Parade event. The town was recognized for hosting an event that was able to adapt and, yes, Councillor Longo, pivot, evolve during the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic. Special thanks go to Anna Rucklin in our Parks Department, Kurt Merriman and the Oakville firefighters, Audrey Bashman, Jim Pendlebury, our communications team, and of course, the lighting team led by Kyle Harrison and Frank Amaral in our Parks Department. The second one is of a personal note. I'd like to congratulate my nephew, Mr. Chris Chappelle, on receiving the 2021 Leadership Award for the Atlantic Firefighter Program. And as a result, he has accepted a cadet position near his home in New Brunswick. This has been a lifelong goal for Chris to become part of the firefighting team, and his parents, Pete and Sue, and his wife and 4 children couldn't be prouder, and neither could I. So congratulations.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Dudek, and please pass along the congratulations of all of us. Is there anyone else before I'll offer you one, but I'll go last. Is anyone else? All right. Congratulations and thanks go out tonight to Siemens. Siemens Canada, as many of you know, has its Canadian headquarters in Oakville, and today they opened a new facility that they're calling the MindSphere Application Center. And what it is a place at Siemens headquarters with telecommunications connections all over the world, connecting together the many resources of expertise and talent in the Siemens Corporation worldwide to help their customers and their partners, and even us here in Oakville at the town, with problem solution and innovation, with an effort to increase efficiency and effectiveness, especially across asset management, data collection, and so on. One of the things that they said was that this MindSphere Application Center is meant to connect people to better information and better thinking than they otherwise could because of this global telecoms connection that they're able to do. I had a demonstration a couple of times, and it is really amazing what they're able to do. And so I congratulate them on this achievement, and I also thank them for choosing to locate it in Oakville. Siemens is a global company, so Oakville is honored to host this at the Siemens headquarters. And with that, everyone, That brings us to requests for reports. I'm not aware of any. But we do still need consideration and reading of the bylaws. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Sanju and Councillor Giddings, thank you. Is there any objection to the bylaws as listed? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The bylaws are adopted. And Council, that completes the work of this meeting. And I want to thank you for your time and attention, your many contributions. And it has been terrific working with you. And this is the end of the meeting. Good night.